Saguaro National Park is rich in natural beauty, physical shapes obvious and attractive to the eye. Mesquite trees and hackberry bushes line the drive through spiny, cactus-studded bajadas in the east district of the park. The Rincon Mountains, tipped in a dark green cap of evergreen trees, rise in the distance from the desert floor. This is what you might see if your family drives the loop road through the east district of the park on a late summer day after the monsoon rains. Beyond this view, more wonders are hidden. Streams, springs, and tanques vein the mountains and slopes above. Water gives life to plants and animals of all shapes and sizes. Javelina, bobcat, horned lizards, and kangaroo rats. You can easily see the park's natural beauty. What you don't see, what you cannot get by driving or hiking through, are images of the past, of the people who lived in this place. Those settlers were people like you and me, with diverse interests and talents. In fact, over thousands of years, human cultures have shaped and been shaped by this extraordinary land. Today, we'll take a short journey through the history of the people of the area, especially the area in and around what is now the East District of Saguaro National Park. After an introduction to the park, we'll look briefly at its earliest inhabitants, like those who used this metate, as well as Spaniards newly arrived from the Old World. We will also learn about people who established the park and made it what it is today. And finally, we'll look at what is today, what's here for you and your family to enjoy. Saguaro National Park now encompasses nearly 100,000 acres in and around the Rincon Mountains on the east and the Tucson Mountains on the west. Today, the city of Tucson crowds its boundaries. But in 1933, when it began, Saguaro National Park consisted only of land on the east side, far from the city. The park was inspired by a forest of giant cacti unique to the Sonoran Desert. We know them as Saguaros, a word adapted into Spanish from Native American languages of Sonora. With the advent of photography and film in the late 19th and early 20th century, this giant cactus became an icon of the American West. Early westerns filmed with a backdrop of saguaros gave the majestic cactus an admiring audience around the world. But the saguaro has been much more than a curiosity or a symbol to those who have long lived on the fruits of this land. It has been vital to native cultures in the Sonoran Desert for thousands of years. Saguaro fruit has provided food and drink for many mouths. These long-lived cacti have also provided homes and food for the desert's wild community. They are a critical part of the food chain for insects, birds, and other animals. Even in death, saguaros feed microorganisms and replenish the soils. Prehistoric people lived in and around the Rincon Mountains between 15,000 and 10,000 years ago, when the climate was cooler and wetter. They hunted mammoths, camels, and even saber-toothed tigers. By 2,000 years ago, the culture of the people living in the Tucson region had become what is called the Hohokam Culture. The Hohokam flourished in the Rincon area between 700 to 1300 AD. However, when Spaniards arrived in the mid-1500s, the large villages and sophisticated culture of the Hohokam had disappeared. They found only scattered villages of Hohokam living in the valleys of the Santa Cruz and San Pedro rivers. Father Eusebio Quino first came to Sonora in 1694 to convert the Hohokam to Western traditions and religion. Quino found the Hohokam people growing corn and other native crops. Taken in 1932, this photograph depicts a typical Hohokam home of the time, showing how they used the natural resources of the land. Much like their ancestors, building homes and utensils from clays and plant materials, using saguaro fruit for food and drink, saguaro ribs in shelters, and ocotillo stems for fencing. Hohokam craftspeople still use devil's claw to get dark fibers for weaving baskets. At about the same time the Spanish explorers arrived, the Apache migrated into the region and began raiding villages, causing many O'odham to leave the more fertile Rincon and Tanque Verde valleys for the protection of the new Spanish presidio. Father Kino had brought wheat and fruit trees, as well as cattle for the mission communities, and he trained his novitiates to raise the crops and livestock. After Kino, Spaniards drove their cattle into the area, changing lifestyles and landscapes in the Sonoran Desert. The practice of open-range ranching itself came from the plains of Spain to the New World. Roundups, branding, and other Spanish ranching traditions filtered north from New Spain with its people. By the mid-1800s, men in the newly established country of Mexico had set up large ranches throughout what is now southern Arizona. Spanish was the language of the land. In fact, ranch is the word that comes almost directly from the Spanish word rancho.